Okay, Dad, today is Monday, July 15th, and what a weekend. So let's just jump
Yeah.
straight into it. So let's talk about the Trump assassination attempt. What are your initial
You mean the
thoughts?
popping sounds at the Trump rally?
Oh, right. Yes, the loud noises or the fact that Trump fell and was escorted off.
Right. Yeah, well, yeah, quite an extraordinary event. And his response was remarkable. I mean, it's hard not to be impressed by his courage. I think most of us under those circumstances would have crawled away rather than stood up defiantly, because there was no way that he could know, that the lone shooter had been shot dead at that point. There could easily have been another shooter. The man is, yeah,
He's
he's
got
courageous.
balls.
He does. Yeah, I was going to say that, but yeah. And I think I think everybody knows. I think when everybody saw that, they thought that the election is basically over. It was already going to be a difficult, very difficult for Biden to win, right? Very unlikely. And now it seems like the odds are just abysmal for him at this point. I mean, because it's not just that Trump responded so heroically to this event, but he just drew a greater contrast between him and his feeble opponent. I mean, everybody sees it. It's just like there are these policy issues and so on and so forth, which are in the end, like the gap between them on policy may not really be very much, but there's such a stark contrast between these two men as individuals. And
Right.
I think of the electorate, a good part of the electorate. I mean, there are ideological voters on both sides, but there are a lot of people in the middle that are really persuaded by that kind of thing.
Right. I mean, neither of us are Trump fans. We're not MAGA people. We criticize Trump heavily. Um, but you have to respect, I think,
Right.
how he handled it. Like you said, there's very few people who I think would respond that way, to stand
Right.
back up. And a lot of people like to think that, oh, if I was in this situation, yeah, I would act heroically. But it's very rare that you have an actual test. And when that actual test comes,
Yeah.
most people will fail. And I'll just say it myself.
I think I would fail. I'd be
yeah,
honest. Yeah.
I don't even necessarily even know if saying that it's failing. It's just the
Yeah.
sensible thing to do is to stay
Right.
down. Like I'm the target. They shot me, hit me through my ear. You go down, and he pops back up pretty quickly,
Right.
defiantly, which is just. You wonder, is that
Yeah.
just stupidity? But it's courageous as well.
Yeah.
So it commands some respect, and I think the left. This is probably the worst possible outcome for them.
Right.
They hate because he was handed this. It's something just one in a million type of event, a billion type of event. This assassination, the fact that
Right.
he turned his head right before, and it, could have ended horribly. And then so that he wasn't killed, and then the way he responded, and then just
Yeah.
the photo that was taken
Right.
of that incident.
Yeah.
Like this,
You're
this
right.
might be
Like
the
Hollywood
most
couldn't do it better. Right.
right. This is one
Yeah.
of the most iconic. Will be one of the most iconic photos in American history now. Just that picture of him with blood on his face, his fist raised
Right.
defiantly, the American flag
Right.
in the background, surrounded
Right.
by servicemen, and he's still, the only thing that I can think of potentially more patriotic image is the Iwo Jima flag raising image, where you have that, and we have statues of that all over. So
Right.
really an incredible event. And we criticize Trump and how his policies, he will flip flop on him a lot, but yeah, we respect the man for the way he handled that situation and stood up. But what do you think? Do you believe any type of conspiracies around this? Do you think anything about your thoughts on the shooter or the media instigating this just through their rhetoric? I mean, what are your thoughts on how this incident happened, and the response to it from the establishment?
Okay, well, I did a lot of reading, watched a lot of interviews, and I thought that actually the very best was not much noticed interview. I don't think it got very many views, conducted by Larry C. Johnson, the ex-CIA analyst of a former FBI sniper. So this is somebody who had the job, was actually the job that you saw. There were those two snipers on the roof behind him, right? That was the sort of thing he did at all kinds of events, over the course of many years. And so he was, it's a process, that he's very, very familiar with, how you're supposed to secure an area, what various kind of, the different agencies that are involved, how they coordinate with each other, the specific roles that people have, he seemed to be very, very competent. I mean, this was something that he'd done. He just knew the whole thing inside out. And so in the end, I found his analysis convincing, and I'm just going to summarize it very quickly. He thought that actually the response of the people, right around him was correct and was professional. He thought that what they call the inner perimeter, that it had been properly secured. That is, the area in which the spectators are allowed. They have to pass through a gate, and they have to be go through. I guess you call it something more or less like a metal detector. The inner perimeter was secure. He said that the snipers actually responded properly, and I'll get back to that, because that touches on a very important issue. But there was clearly just an utter abject failure to secure the outer perimeter. That it was just obvious that you should have had somebody on that roof, or in some way secured it to make sure that nobody got on that roof, the one that the assassin fired from. And that there's just no excuse for it. It was an abject failure, and an embarrassment, a stain on the reputation of the Secret Service. He said the Secret Service, has had an excellent reputation. It's been, 43 years since an attempted assassination of a U.S. president. That would be Ronald Reagan, 1981, John Hinkle. And then since then, they reassessed, their own procedures after, and they came up with something that's really worked. It's worked for better than 4 decades. But this time they didn't adhere to it. Now, so the question is, what? Excuse me. The question, why this abject failure? And, he said it could be, there's kind of 2 ways you can go with it. One is malice, the other is incompetence. And he says, okay, I'm not going to tell you what to think. You could go either way with this. But he says the incompetence argument is not unreasonable. And this is what he's saying. There was a lot of talk. Okay, there are people saying, hey, there's a guy on that roof, and why didn't these guys shoot until he started shooting the snipers behind him? And he says that, well, a lot of these events, sometimes, you coordinate with local law enforcement. And there could have been, and then, you've seen the incidents like this in the past where, there's this guy on the roof. Is he one of our guys? There's a great deal of concern. But you don't just shoot him because he could be local law enforcement, that, just not quite clear. And that's the last thing you want to do is gun down some local cop. And, even the way this guy was dressed, it could have been. So that the fact that they were hesitant to shoot him, doesn't show that there was malice there. It could be, again, the snipers responded correctly. They had to be sure, that this was an actual perpetrator before they fired. Now, that shouldn't have ever gotten to that point. They nearly lost Donald Trump. He very nearly was killed. He should not have gotten on that roof. And that's, that's the thing, is that the people that were responsible for securing that outer perimeter just completely flubbed it.